All right, mastering. Mastering a track is kind of a touchy subject in the amateur music production scene, or whatever you want to call it. Some sources say you should just leave it to the engineers. Some sources say you should just pull out a limiter and crank that shit up to where it's basically blasting at 0 decibels. But I have found a very simple method to mastering a track and having it sound pretty close to like commercial music, where it's very loud, more or less. So anyway, so this is the track Menthol Night. I already posted it on YouTube, but let's just hear it without any compression on the master channel. Also, these two EQs, it's just one's just boosting the high and the other one's just cutting certain sections out. So it's not doing anything really. Alright, so as you can hear, it's pretty quiet, and let's even look at the waveform. So I'm using this instance of Fruity Limiter, which isn't doing anything other than, obviously it's going to limit everything at 0 decibels, but let's just play it as it is. So as you can see, it's a lot of pits and valleys and stuff in there, a lot of transients and stuff, whatever, and it doesn't look like a stick of butter, which a lot of commercial tracks do. So basically what I do is I pull out Maximus. You don't even really have to use Maximus. I suppose you could just use something basic like Fruity Compressor, but I used Maximus, and I don't do any multi-band compression, which I know sounds a bit ridiculous seeing that Maximus is a multi-band compressor, but I just use the master compressor. So it opens by default like this without this point here. And so basically all you do is you play the track at its peak, I guess, like where a lot of sounds are going on, preferably the loudest portion of it, I think. Alright, so right now it's not doing any compression. It's basically just hard limiting everything that reaches 0 decibels, because right here. But basically what I do is I take my mouse and I put it to where about all of these pits and valleys are averaging out, which is like right around here. And it's sitting at about negative 7.5 decibels, which you can see at the top left corner of the screen underneath file, edit, add, patterns, all of that stuff underneath the toolbar. So I set a point, so that's basically the threshold, and according to the thing at the top left, it's set at negative 6.6 decibels, and then I just move this down a couple notches, and it's compressing. And I used a second instance of Maximus, which might be a little bit overkill, but originally when I made this, I didn't have Loud Max, which is the secret sauce to all of this. So anyway, so basically I just did the same thing here. I set a point, I compressed it a little bit. Oh, and then I pulled out Fruity Limiter. Is that the right one? Then I just pulled out Fruity Limiter and added a little bit of gain, so everything is sitting very close to 0 decibels. And as you can see, it's a lot more flat, but it's not quite there. It's not brick wall limited yet. For that, we need Loud Max, which is a free VST. I will put the download link in the description if I'm not a lazy bastard. And basically, you turn on Loud Max 64, and you play your track. Okay, I think that paused Loud Max. So, okay, no, it didn't. But basically, you put down the threshold to where, again, where the volume is averaging out mostly, which it's kind of at -2, -3 decibels. And then just set the output to 0 decibels, and it will brick wall limit the shit out of your mix. So let's listen to it now. Let's turn it on first and then listen to it. But you heard the change, I'm sure. So as you can see, it looks like a stick of butter. I mean, it is brick wall limited to all hell. It's loud. So, I mean, that's kind of what you want with electronic music. And I know somebody out there is going to be like, but the dynamic range and all of that. And to that I say, dynamic range in electronic music? Don't kid yourself, man. I also almost forgot to mention that you should not go overboard on the compression. There is a time when you do need dynamics, or at least not an absolute butt ton of compression. I know some people there that are like huge advocates of dynamic range are probably looking at what I had here. Yeah, some advocates of dynamic range are probably looking at that and they're already cringing. But there comes a point where there's just way too much compression. So let's pull out loud max again, and let's just overdo the compression. Let's just set it to like -25 decibels, okay? And on the loud segments, it's not going to sound too horrid. See, it's not going to overdo the compression there because there's a lot of sounds going on. It's already really close to 0 decibels anyway. But the problem is when it becomes quiet, that's when you hear like a spike in the volume, and it just sounds really weird. So let me play this. So that's when the compression is overboard, is when when the quiet parts almost sound like they've gone up in volume a lot, and then they suddenly disappear once all the instruments are kicking back in. A very good example of this is actually at the beginning of the track, right here. I'm pretty sure you can hear that sounds incredibly unnatural right there with the piano and the kick. Like the piano is just like, it's squashed. So now let's go back to what we had it at before, which was -2 decibels. Let's try to get it exact. Come on. 2 decibels, please. Oh, damn it. Come on. Okay, there we go. Now let's listen to it. See, it sounds a lot more natural. It doesn't sound squashed, that first piano note, and it's still pretty loud. I mean, this is a quiet segment anyway. You kind of want the volume to move around, and this is the loud segment, which, you know, everyone just wants blasting. But basically, that's how you get that commercially loud brick wall limited sound with just plugins that are in FL Studio and a free VST that you can download off of the internet.